Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 68 of the NTS Podcast. This time, we're lucky to be joined by, I'd say, the best Viego in the UK, Beartree, Munster Rugby mid laner. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Good stuff. Obviously, referencing there the game against Lucendi yesterday, which I'm sure we'll get into. As always, joined by my co-host Tom. Tom, you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, we're all good here. I am boiling in my little cupboard.
Yeah, on that topic, I'm just going to out you for a second, Tom. For those that might have seen our tea and coffee debates before, Tom did just say he's been 3 days without a cup of tea, which is,
It's true.
I think it means he's going over to the other side. Tom, get yourself an iced coffee.
And then, not getting an iced coffee. And no, I've had an iced mocha before, and I don't mind them, but not an iced coffee. I can't do that.
I'm sure you'll change one day. Anyway, then let's start off with yourself, Beartree. And obviously, for anyone that's seen any episodes before, really, you'll know that when we get a new guest for the first time, we usually go a bit back in the past and talk about some of the other teams you've been on and things. And you're one person actually, because we talked to a lot of people that have been in the UK for a long time, but myself and Tom have only been involved really for the last couple of years. So you're one guest actually that I remember you coming into the UK scene, which is quite a contrast to some of the others. Obviously with Phelan, I think it was back in the UKLC maybe last season. I think the season before last, if I remember correctly, as a top laner then. Yeah, 2019. For starters, then, just how did that even come about? Because it was a Phelan team that, when you look at it on paper now as well, and I'm just going to read it out: Soft, Chimera, Achu, and Wisdom were your teammates. And I think it was Zizzle, or someone like that was like the top laner before. And you came in like halfway through the season with a team that's struggling a little bit. But obviously, hearing some of those names now, seeing what they've gone on to in the last couple of years, it might sound surprising that team was struggling at the time. So yeah, why don't you just maybe just start off with explaining a little bit about how you actually ended up on the team and how that kind of substitution came to be.
Sure. Well, about the time I was aware of UK Esports and wanted to get involved, that split had already started. And I briefly looked for offers. I think I got a couple of UKEL offers, but the UKLC teams were already locked. So I was pretty fruitless until I think it was Soft reached out to me on Twitter saying, we need a top laner. Do you want to come try out for us? I believe they're having some difficulties with Zizzle. I don't remember exactly what was going on, but basically they needed someone to finish the split and play the Forge Champions with them, or the playoffs rather.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how we got involved.
Yeah, and it was like not the worst time to start as well, because that was, if anyone remembers, the split where Phelan basically scraped into playoffs, I think. But then I think Pad joined as a coach I don't know if it was right before playoffs or like during the season or before or just before playoffs started.
A couple of weeks, I think, before playoffs.
Yeah,
and then ended up
playoffs.
Making the ridiculous run, literally from it was because at that time it was a gauntlet, and I think Phelan were in the first round of the gauntlet, and basically went all the way up until the semi-final where it was against Excel, which was the point where you came to an academy team, and they unfortunately lost. So what was the kind of, at least even the atmosphere like at that point, knowing that maybe when Pad joined, did you notice any difference when you first joined before him, or was he already there?
I think when Pad joined, the atmosphere became very fun. Pad is a funny guy. He's a great coach, and he brings a lot of energy to practice. And yeah, I think the mood was really light. He was already good friends with Atu and Wisdom, so they got on really well, and that sort of energy kind of really came into the team towards the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of that energy, that sort of we're here to win, but there's no point playing if you're not having fun, right? And making some jokes. I think that really helped us to take each game, one game at a time,
Mm-hmm.
not lose hope, and not see how many games we have to win in a row to achieve what we want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really think Pad was coming in was a really great help for us.
And I do think that we do have to talk about this as well. How was it kind of wanting to go into the UK scene, being like, okay, I want to try this competitively, and then being faced with a tower format. I'm surely you must have had some questions about, okay, is is this what the UK scene is right now with this type of FA Cup style tower format? How was it kind of like? Because a lot of people I think had gone through, especially guests that we had gone through kind of like LAN tournament events, and then had also done like the league structure, and then they had this tower format. But how was it for you, kind of just immediately going into this? Has this been your like first experience in the UK scene?
Sure. I admit until about my second split, I had no idea what was going on. I just played the games that I was told to play.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still don't really understand the tower format, but I understand its premise is to get as many Excel and Fnatic games as possible, or that's what people said. And yeah, I don't think that's a great format whatsoever.
It didn't work anyway because I think
No.
Diablos ended up winning it in the end, didn't they? So...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you were there, what were your thoughts just on your teammates? Obviously, I presume that was like pretty much the first team you ended up with. But like I said, a lot of those players have ended up kind of going on elsewhere. I think Chimera you even played with again later on as well. So was there like any kind of like instant connection there, or what was just your first thoughts on the team you actually joined?
I mean, I believe Chimera and Soft were pretty much rookies at that point. I think they'd played before. I'm not entirely sure, but I know Wisdom and Achi were quite experienced.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag, I guess. I think overall they were just really great teammates in that, we had a lot of fun. I think we all got on pretty well. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that experience playing with them. I think I learned a lot in that time.
Yeah. And to be fair, it kind of sounds like if you say like, especially Soft and Chimera are both more or less rookies. I guess at that point, you like once the split before had not gone too well, it was like basically nothing to lose. Like, oh well, we've scraped in playoffs. No one really expects anything from us. We could just go out and like you say, when Pad coming in, you could have fun, and obviously it ended up like being ridiculous. What was it like that game? Like maybe before XL, had you finally started to think like, oh, maybe we could do it? Could we just go one more and get in the final?
I can't speak for everyone else, but I was feeling pretty indestructible at that point.
I can imagine.
I felt like we really had a decent shot at least taking a game off XL. Didn't work out that way. Sendo really showed me up quite badly, particularly in the first game. He really destroyed me. So yeah.
Yeah, never mind. But yeah, I imagine that was a decent like your first dip into competitive. Was there? Because had you thought like when, especially joining halfway through the season, had you thought like I'll just see how it goes for this, like subbing in for this player, see if I like it, or was it did you like try that chance and then that at that point you knew you wanted to keep going, or what was that like?
Sure. I mean, I didn't really know what competitive League of Legends was about. I didn't really know the difference between competitive and solo queue, and yeah, I just didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of just wanted to see what it was like. And I had so much fun in that first split that I really want to keep it going. I really felt like it's for me.
Well, obviously going into the next split then, you stuck with Phelan. This may be like a bit of a side topic, but obviously Phelan ended up going into the original Munster Academy, and there was a lot of controversy around there. I just wondered from like your perspective when you first joined Phelan and re-signed with them, was kind of how the atmosphere seemed then, because I think we spoke to Mulgrew fairly recently, and he kind of sort of said it seemed like things were above board for the most part before. Kind of to preface it, he said like before Munster got involved, not in this case of like Munster were the reason that things got sort of messed up, but maybe that the owner kind of got in over his head at that point once he thought more investment was coming in and things. But in terms of like the more grassroots version of Phelan before all that kicked off, was there anything that's sort of seemed a bit untoward? Or I suppose maybe at that point you'd not really been involved in another team. Did you really not really notice what could have been a bit dodgy anyway?
I was aware of the reputation Phelan had. I was warned when joining the team. I have to say, I was on the team for much of the same time as Mulgrew. And to me, I never really saw any mistreatment. I was paid on time, properly, in the full amount. I didn't have too much sort of contact with management, I guess, outside of Mulgrew. And during the time I was there, it seemed completely fine. I will say when I was briefly there while they were kind of merging with Munster, and there were some sort of promises made that never really came out, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my experience of Phelan, I wouldn't say it was negative whatsoever.
Mhm.
But obviously, what happened with the NLC guys is not really acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was one of those where I think Phelan at the time, I just don't think were like managed as perfect as they was, and then obviously what happened then after that, because it wasn't really, let's be honest, like a well managed kind of organization as a whole. Not from like the player and the coach's standpoint, from like the the further up. That obviously then when the Munster thing came in, it kind of insinuated that even more because then resources came available, which let's be honest, they probably didn't have the right to really handle at that point. So
Yeah.
it is definitely like kind of one of those things where you kind of see like sometimes going from like such like a grassroots, like you say, kind of organization. If you've not got the basics right, it can be very, very detrimental in the future if it kind of develops even more and even further, because those things could stick with you from far out. And
Mhm.
obviously, right now, like Phelan aren't there anymore, and luckily we've got Munster. Munster actually are there. They learned from that as well as Phelan. Well, Phelan didn't learn from that, but Munster learned from that situation as well.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Yeah, that was a bit of a side topic I just wanted to ask. But then kind of going into that actual split then. So your first full split, if you like, was the UKLC spring of last year. And to be fair, when thinking back, I remember at the time thinking like that the top lane was pretty much the only role where I couldn't think of any like weak players on any team, because obviously when you first joined Phelan, you looked pretty good. Like in the UKLC, you looked like you belonged there and had made a good impression, I think, when you first joined. And then just looking at the rest of the pool, like I've got them written down: Flares, Sendo, Kerberos, Only Angel, Pride, Mumus, Shikari. There's like literally not a bad player in there. Did you kind of realize at that point how sort of stacked it was, or was there maybe not that kind of pressure because it was like your first full split?
Sure. Top lane was very stacked at split. I think especially compared to the split before, where there just wasn't as many standout players. I definitely felt a bit shown up in terms of experience in that split. But I mean, these guys were really good. Shikari is arguably LEC in my opinion. It's just yeah, it felt really tough.
Was there any of those, like maybe apart from Shikari in particular, that when you actually played against them as well, you just thought, God, this guy's like ridiculous?
Uh, I think Sendo was always really hard for me because I was often played weak side, and Sendo, whether or not he's playing weak side or strong side, he will push you to your limit of how much he can take and how much he can deny you. So playing against Sendo was always really rough. I think he's a really solid player.
Yeah, I can imagine because I think that was the split too, where like when some tier lists came out, that was like the first time Sendo had been ranked quite low, and he seemed to just completely like flick a switch from that point, like from the tier list, and ended up like basically his best split that we saw from him on Excel. So I can definitely imagine that.
I think with the whole Sendo thing, I think it was one of those where maybe he wasn't like in terms of like mechanical skills of being always like the best mechanical player, but he had the experience to kind of, I think, insinuate his positives and reduce his negatives, and having obviously Excel around that with that Excel roster at the time, that also helped. And so not every person, I think we kind of said it, like not every person needs to be this standout Kerberos style aggressive attacking jungler, because sometimes you have to have that facilitator, and in that roster, it was Sendo. And there was very rare times where Sendo would make a mistake in most of the entire times, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think in competitive, it's quite easy to recognize the people who are comfortable and the people who are nervous or uncomfortable. And the people who are comfortable, particularly like Sendo, who they'll play lane like it's solo queue, and they'll take those dodgy trades or cheese the bush or stuff like this. Which if you're uncomfortable on stage, are things you don't do. You just want to play a normal game of League. I think
And
that's
I like to think that like top lane as well is like one of the roles where I feel like mentally you've got to be quite chill. You've got to be quite patient, because at the end of the day, you know, with the way that obviously some top lanes, obviously you get the chance to be that kind of aggressive player, but most of the time it's like the team is relying on you to be this kind of facilitator, to be this person to back up on, and so they don't want you dying 3 times to their enemy top laner and stuff like that. They want you to kind of play it a bit nicer and kind of work around everything else, and then hope that the other teams, the other players, can kind of help through it. It's like one of the roles which I do think, in like mindset wise, like you do just have to be kind of like really sensible. I feel like through it, and it's hard to play in a game of League of Legends and be sensible. Like,
Definitely. Now I said a minute ago, that obviously, that the top lane in general was pretty stacked, that split. But even I think the teams as a whole, that was probably for me the strongest UK split. Obviously, it was the last one before the NLC merger, where obviously the top players ended up going over there as well. But I remember, at the time, it didn't really seem, other than maybe Enclave, who ended up with 1 win, there didn't really seem like any team that was like clearly not good. The closest was like Demise, who obviously had like issues and lane swaps, role swaps, and all that. But what was it like being, for your perspective in the split? Because obviously yourselves, you ended up a fair way off playoffs in the end. But then remember, the top 4 playoff teams, still now, like, all of them look really strong. And yourselves and M&M, like the teams just behind it, didn't make playoffs. M&M were really strong too. So was there like the expectation to make a push for playoffs, or by the end of it, did you guys kind of think, fair enough, it was a strong split, we did the best we could?
I mean, again, I can't really speak for everyone else, but for me, it felt much like a learning split. It was my first full split. I was there to learn as much as possible, to get comfortable playing competitive games, and I wasn't too invested in whether or not I made playoffs. Obviously, it was disappointing, but I don't think it was necessarily unexpected. The split was just so stacked. We had Jack Spector coming on as a rookie. He was obviously playing NLC now, I believe, and it's obviously a really good player, but he just didn't have the experience like I didn't as well. So yeah, I think it was a pretty tough split.
And even like, yeah, you say like Jack Spector, obviously Raisins was pretty much a veteran at that point. Sawyer in the NLC now, Jagrain promoted to the NLC with Galaxy Race. So yeah, like, and for that
I
to be
mean,
a team
Jack
that was like
Spector's in the
Superliga, is it?
the Superliga, yeah.
Yeah, I think didn't he go to EU Masters as well? I think, or joined an
I don't
EU
know if he
Masters
went
team.
to Yeah, he's gone to Betis, I think, just
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think like that was a team that now at that point was 5 games off playoff, which is quite far. But then, yeah, you say like what the players that they had at the point, it just shows how strong that season was. I think really. When it kind of came to the next season, then obviously at that point was when the NLC was formed. You ended up basically staying in the UKLC with London at that point. Was there any NLC offers or any kind of tryouts? Was there a chance that you would have ended up there?
I was contacted for tryouts. I don't think they ever came. I don't believe I got any NLC offers during that time. So yeah, I played UKLC.
And then when you obviously joined London, then was that that was like the second time I think you played with Razors at that point as well. So it's like another player you ended up playing with again. Was that part of the reason you joined, or quite how did that work out?
I mean, it was Chimera and Raisins who I'd known before.
Yeah.
And in general, I do enjoy playing with people I played with before, and Chimera and Raisins have a really good attitudes to improving and working together as a team. So I think for me personally, that's more important than having a 1000 LP player who's could be very good, but might not have the attitudes you need to bring your team up over the duration of the split.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I suppose, like you kind of get used to how to communicate. You know what their personality is like, what kind of feedback would respond best, and even the opposite. They, being fairly still a rookie at your point back then, they would have known best how to maybe communicate with yourself, for you to take the info back best. So yeah, I can imagine like some like top challenger player comes in, with like tail between their like being like cocky and all that. Maybe it doesn't help too much. Now that was a split, obviously, where it ended up being just like this ridiculous tie until more or less the last week, where basically every team, I think, like pretty much except for Bulldogs, I'm pretty sure every team could have more or less got to playoffs, and it ended up 1 point or like 1 win between first place and like 6th place or something like that. What was that like? Kind of being in there, and especially going into the end of it when it's like so close, and anyone can finish anywhere. Just what was kind of the atmosphere at that point?
I think the atmosphere was too good. I mean, we gave it our role in our last few games, but to have a kind of positive record that split, and I feel like we played quite well as a team, and to then not achieve playoffs was quite disappointing and disheartening, I'd say. I think that was shared among everyone on my team.
Yeah, because I remember I was looking back, and I think you guys were even like literally like second place, basically like with like a week left. So, do you think there was like even like something that caused that, or was it just literally an off week and it was so close that it ended up just knocking you guys out basically?
Uh, I can't remember exactly the final few games, but I don't think we played particularly bad or particularly worse than we were usually. Maybe the opponents just showed up particularly well on the day, and we didn't achieve what we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I felt sorry for the people who are the tournament organisers for this, having to work out what they would have to do with tiebreakers, and because honestly, like in the end, I think it worked out where I think like the top four were all on the same score, and then like so playoffs was kind of confirmed there, and obviously I think it was down to like seeding on what would happen there. But and then like fifth and sixth, but it could have easily been like 5 teams on the same score, which would have just been how do you even work that out? It would have to be another tournament within another tournament just to secure who gets into playoffs.
Yeah, there ended up being. I'm just brought it up now. There was literally like a knockout bracket of tiebreakers from the first four teams. It was pretty crazy. Um, would you have fancied yourselves? I'm just looking now, like for example, if you'd have actually, I don't even know how they worked out who was first to fourth to begin with. To be fair, I'm trying to work out who you guys might have played in a tiebreaker, but honestly, I ain't got a clue. But yeah, would you have, if you even if you'd have got to playoffs, maybe like had a chance at Talia Masters? Do you reckon you could have sort of brung it around, or was it maybe? I suppose it's hard to say. Obviously, that getting knocked out of playoffs at the last week would have been a bit of a crushing blow. But I suppose if you'd have made it in, the confidence would have still been there. Do you think?
Yeah, I think we definitely could have had a decent shot at playoffs and Talia Masters. I feel as a team we were pretty solid, and I think the scoreline kind of shows that the split was so close.
Mm-hmm. Just obviously going on from that split, then that's basically last split before the summer split now. I know, sorry, before the actually I'm getting my splits all messed up. But eventually you've ended up ditching the top lane essentially, where obviously you started your career, and that's where you first had your main impression, and decided to then eventually come to mid lane. What was the thoughts around that? Was that something you'd maybe thought of for a while, and it just now seemed maybe the best time for that?
Well, originally I wasn't after that kind of disappointing split. I wasn't really interested in playing competitive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think I put the league as a whole aside for a little while, and then I came back and I just wanted to have some fun really. So I got up with Smurf. I played all of Zed, pretty much only Zed until about Diamond 1, and then I picked up Silas as well. I started playing him in solo queue last year. And I was just kind of two-checking those champions around Grandmaster level and just having fun really. I was kind of bored of playing these top lanings. I played a lot of like Ornn and Gangplank and stuff like this in comp, which practicing them in solo queue is often pretty unpleasant. So I was just having fun playing some champions with some agency in a new role, and yeah, that's kind of how I came switch to mid lane.
So what you're saying is you went on a Smurf because you didn't want to let down the top lane community that you were secretly training to become a mid laner. Like I've just gotta create a brand new Smurf just to play these games because I can't let anybody know this until it's correct. Because the top lane community they love playing Ornn in solo queue and Maokai. Who doesn't love a Maokai game?
Yeah. I don't think Wally is ever going to forgive me.
I feel like it's a waste that I'm no good at League, because I actually like playing those champs as well. I love playing Ornn, especially when people kind of underestimate how much damage you can do. It's just a shame that I'm absolutely awful, to be honest. I'd have loved it, but yeah. What was kind of when you went to mid then? Was it quite a quick thing that once you kind of rose up, you thought, oh, maybe I'll go back to competitive, or did you think, maybe have some fun in solo queue for a while, maybe even try streaming or anything like that?
I didn't really have any plans. I just started uni, so I was mostly focused on that. I was playing a little bit of UKEL. I was playing mid for my team there, and Reason sort of messaged me saying, "Oh, we need you to fill a scrim." So I filled a scrim, and then he said, "Oh, can you help us with these qualifiers for UKEL?" I thought, yeah, why not? So I did that. I scrimmed with the team for a couple of weeks, and I just found it really fun, and I kind of found my enthusiasm for it again. And I felt a lot better in mid lane. I think it's a lot more natural role for me. I feel like as a player, I really like to play around my team and help facilitate my team, and that's a lot easier to do in mid lane, where you're in the middle of the map. Whereas in top lane, you have TP once every 6 minutes, and kind of just chilling until then.
Hmm.
I think it's funny how some kind of these times these work in terms of how you get put into kind of like a team. Like we had Dragdar on quite a while ago, and his case was like, oh, I wasn't even trying to get a team, and then they'd be like, oh, do you want to just play with us for a little bit? And then next thing you know, he's playing competitively with them. Was that kind of what it was basically like then with Munster in the end? Like, because now obviously you playing in mid lane for them, you were like, okay, well let's just do this and see how this goes.
Pretty much, yeah. I just wanted to get back into it. Really, I found my enthusiasm again.
Hmm. So, was there any thoughts, especially when you say like you'd pretty much just been two tricking in solo queue when you sort of kind of got onto the even just at the qualifiers? Do you think, oh, maybe I should play a couple other things as well, just in case they just target ban you and then you're screwed?
Sure. Originally, the plan was to just play the champions that played top lane. I think we've seen quite a lot of the Surf Flags in
Hmm.
our games. It's been a really strong pick for us. But yeah, eventually we did have to pick up some new champs. Mostly drop the Z. I'm not sure how valuable that is in competitive. Not saying I won't bring it out in playoffs, so the other teams should keep their bans open. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Any thoughts of like even like an Ornn mid or something? Because you see it every now and then.
I did play a fair amount of the Sion mid in qualifiers. I think definitely something I should bring back. I'm a big fan of that champion.
It's not bad. The wave clear is ridiculous for
Yeah.
someone that's just full tank. It's a bit of a joke. Kind of once you got through the qualifiers, then was that your mind made up? You thought, well, I've got to at least play the split now.
No, I actually still was under the impression I wasn't going to play at that point. But Munster reached out to me. They kind of just said, "Here's the offer. We're looking at these guys. Give it a think." And I did, and I decided, yeah, software I like, I'll play for them.
Hmm.
I didn't really trial for any other teams. I didn't look for any other teams. I'm quite a big fan of this current iteration of Munster in terms of the staff behind it.
Hmm.
The guy from the rugby side, Ender, is I think he's really doing great things for the Munster team. He's a rugby guy. I don't know how much he knows about League of Legends. I don't think very much, but he always offers his opinions, offers what they're doing on the rugby side to help performance,
Hmm.
how to deal with stress and stuff. I really appreciate what he's doing for the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously you don't expect him to then be coming in and saying, right, you should draft this and play this. But like I think it's important to and sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's good to have this crossover between traditional sports and sports because there are certain aspects and I don't think every aspect can be transversed to and fro. But I think intentionally like how you would approach kind of a competitive game, how you would kind of look after yourself and treat yourself and kind of the mentality can be kind of traversed and kind of crossed over. And do you feel like that is kind of what it is? Like, because I don't know, like, I felt like when obviously it was run by Phelan, again, I'm not just going to slate Phelan for this, obviously, but it felt like it was Monster Rugby Gaming with a logo, and that was kind of it.
Mhm.
Where does it now kind of feel like this is Monster Rugby Gaming, like the team, and there's that feel of it being kind of a rugby team going into esports?
Uh, to a point, yeah, it's still definitely the gaming side and the
Mhm.
rugby side, but I do feel like there's definitely some translation of what they do for the rugby lads and what they do for the Munster guys, for the gaming guys as well.
Mhm.
There's definitely some crossover experience there.
I feel like, especially like even on like the Oh, not even just the mental side, but like the physical side of keeping yourself in shape and things that can obviously help you like mentally and help your practice and stuff. I feel like being with a traditional sports team that's been around for a long time, that's probably the best thing you could get from them. So is there that kind of crossover as well?
Sure. Right. It's not so much on the physical side, but I've brought in a sort of sports psychologist. He's been helping us, set our goals, how we go about our goals, how we give each other criticism, and stuff like this, which I'm sure is something they use in traditional sports, which I think also in esports is becoming more of a thing.
Yeah. I think that's maybe even a bit lucky as well, because you still hear about even some traditional sports team. This is like coming from kind of my own venting a little bit. I'm a Tottenham fan of like traditional football, and it's like become quite well known recently that even like at a Premier League level, there's no sports psychology at that team at the moment, and there hasn't been for like years. So it's I kind of I suppose even a bit lucky that you end up with a sports team that has that you can kind of branch from as well, because like you say, even obviously in esports it can have a huge effect as well. So that's obviously good to hear. Going into the split then, what was your kind of initial expectations? I think especially people knowing that you'd been in the UKLC for a while before, uh, even without really seeing you play mid lane, I think the expectation was you should come in and be basically one of the best players, no matter what role you're playing. So was that something you matched yourself, or did you think maybe doing a recent role swap, I'm still gonna have to get used to it a little bit?
I don't feel like the role swap is going to hinder me. I played a full year of mid lane in solo queue, and I feel like the playstyle fits me pretty naturally. So I don't feel like the role is going to be an issue for me. I think taking a year break, I was a bit rusty on how to play competitive properly.
Hmm.
The expectation for myself, I did expect myself to perform. I think I thought I was quite good compared to the competition, and I feel like I'm quite experienced. So ideally, I should perform. Um, that being said, the I've been quite impressed by the level of the UKEL mid lane in particular. I feel like there's some really solid players who I didn't know about, or I didn't expect them to play quite as well as they have.
Hmm. So was that? Did you feel even like any level of pressure for that, or was that just something that you hadn't really thought about, and it was just once you played against them, you realized they are actually quite good?
Um, I wouldn't say I felt particularly much pressure, but I did get surprised, particularly in our first game. I think against Aldous or Nerdridge back then. Uh, I was surprised by how sort of aggressive and confident they played.
Hmm.
I expected more than I expected people to be at a lower level. I expected people to be more nervous and less confident to play a competitive game.
Hmm.
So that's probably what impressed me the most.
Yeah.
And I think obviously there is a skill level between like NLC and the third division, like you would expect it from kind of any league. But to even put it in perspective, like FGG was before this whole Resolve kind of takeover of Barrage. FGG was going to be in Resolve Academy, which would have been playing in the UKEL if the purchase hadn't occurred. Now FGG then after what happened with Resolve went straight up into the NLC and was arguably one of the like best players and helped change the side and at least secure them a spot still in the NLC. So it really shows that while like the overall level may not be obviously to the NLC kind of standard, that you are going to get these kind of young players who are going to develop themselves and and find it. And like I said, I've mentioned him before, Dragdar UKEL went straight to NLC, didn't even go into the middle route, just went literally UKEL singularity, and they've been looking unbelievable since. So.
Hmm. And is there like a thought? Obviously, this is maybe getting a little bit ahead. But even like after playoffs, is there a thought of what you might try and do next? Would you kind of even see if you can get any LC tryouts or try at UKLC next?
I haven't put that much thought into the future, but I'm definitely going to look for tryouts. I'm going to evaluate offers, but yeah, I haven't really given it too much thought. I don't really mind where I play. What's more important for me is an effective team atmosphere where I can learn something new and have fun, basically.
Hmm.
So what you're saying is you're going to bring Munster Rugby Gaming eventually to the NLC, just drive
Pretty
them up,
much.
be the talisman. So I do want to bring out though. Let's be honest. While it ended pretty well with Munster getting into the playoffs, spoiler, it didn't start off very well for about 4 weeks, 3 weeks, really. Like how much was it kind of like mentally on you to kind of see you this team not really performing as much as kind of what people were expecting to, especially right at the beginning?
Sure. It wasn't great. I think understandably, I was pretty upset not to be winning. I think there was expectation on me to win or carry or something like this. It's not really how League of Legends works, but the expectation is there. So I think that was pretty rough and it was pretty frustrating. I think our first few weeks of practice and scrims were not really that. What's the words?
Like,
Not great, impactful.
yeah, not great.
But yeah, I feel like towards the end of the split, particularly with the help of a sports psychologist, we really worked on how to improve our practice time. How to learn more and faster, waste less time. I think this really worked out towards the end of the split.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like,
Okay.
go on.
No, you go.
Oh,
Tom.
go on, Lee. Oh, fine. So, especially like as it was kind of coming to like the end of the split, because a lot of it was very like tooth and nail, very close. We didn't know kind of where everything was going. Was there thoughts of like flashbacks of London saying, "Oh no, not again"? A very competitive season's going to occur. But like you did though, like you had the grit and you stuck through and you got the results that you needed in the end. And I think you could probably say more than anybody. Then once you're in playoffs, like that's it. This is the chance now, isn't it? It's like doesn't matter how where you finish. It kind of depends like now where you end. No playoffs have started.
Exactly. I strongly believe that you almost have an advantage the lower you are in playoffs because momentum, from my experience, is a very real thing in playoffs.
Mm.
And most teams don't get that much scrim time, and time on stage, so to speak, is effectively scrim time.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna come into every game warmed up. As long as we take it one game at a time and we don't get stressed out, I'm actually happier to be coming in at the very bottom than further ahead.
I suppose it's back like kind of to the Phelan example where you've come in now with not too much pressure. It's like you guys literally got in at the last match of the whole regular season. Like you couldn't have, I suppose, scraped it anymore if you tried. So there's not that much, not too much expectation. One thing you were just saying a minute ago was about the about getting the most out of practice. And you obviously mentioned there as well that even like game time is more or less kind of scrim time at this level where everyone is part time and it's obviously mostly voluntary and things like that. What are your thoughts on sort of at least how to get the most out of practice at this level then? Because obviously we've spoken to it, we've spoken to people even at the NLC level where they say, academy teams are full-time players. They basically get to scrim all day long as their job. And even just going down in NLC, like within the league, you get the difference between the academies and the semi-pros who they're getting some money, but they can't spend all their time because they've got another full-time job. When it gets down to UKEL point where, like I say, it's mostly voluntary, most people probably aren't getting paid to play, meaning that you've got to obviously make your money elsewhere and you might not have much more than 1 or 2 days of scrims per week. What are your kind of thoughts, even comparing that to when you've been in the UKLC before? Like, how do you kind of try and get the most out of that short time that you've got?
Sure. I think the biggest difference between practicing in the UKLC and practicing in the UKEL was probably the scrim opponents you can find. I think you're pretty you have a lot less choice when you're a third division team, and I think UKLC was basically an ERL then, so you get some really solid scrims. So not much you can do about that. What you can do, I think, is really good is to set goals. This week we're working on I don't know, mid game macro, we're working on early game, we're working on jungle pathing, and you don't evaluate the useless stuff like things you're not really working on. You spend very little time looking at that in review. You spend a lot of time seeing if you've achieved your goals, and if you haven't, you keep working on it until you achieve your goals. Because you can't really learn something new until you've learned what you're already trying to learn, right? So yeah, I think that's the best way to use our practice. I think that's how we started to use our screen time, and it's working really well for us.
Very nice. Kind of coming into even just the last week then, like we said, obviously you guys were like sort of just out, well, not outside, but you were like on the verge of getting in playoffs or not getting in. And your first game in the last week was against X7, who was a team that themselves, I think they might have even been one of the teams, I think you said, Tom, that was spent time in first place and kind of were at the top end, slightly dipped down a little bit. I think they've had some of their own roster sorts of things.
X7 never actually made it into the top spot, but there was a nice setup there, Lee. I appreciate that, But yeah, there was to show how competitive the league was as a whole. Like there were 4 teams which at one point were first place in what is a 7-week regular season. So it's quite insane. Obviously, it was August, Knox, Demise, and then London in the end. Like right at the end, kind of making it in. So it was very choppy and changey. But do you think that the fact that to you, Beartree, the fact that like there wasn't really a definitive best organization kind of at the top, you didn't have like in the UKLC a Resolve, what happened last but where they just kind of dominated, the fact that there wasn't like this is a team which really has took this league by storm, does that give you a little bit of hope kind of going into playoffs as well?
Sure, it's definitely helpful that there's no team seems unbeatable. I think there's definitely some teams are stronger than others, but I definitely get the feeling that anyone on their best day beats anyone on their worst day. If that makes sense. So yeah, I think playoffs is really going to be anyone can win it.
What was it like then in the last match? Obviously, like I said, like last week you had X7 first. You guys ended up losing that, and it basically all boiled down as a result to the last match against Lucendi, where it literally couldn't have been like you couldn't have chosen it any better. Like it was literally the last match of regular season. Whichever team won went to playoffs. Whichever team lost went to relegations. It was literally just all up to that match. And then getting into the start of the match, Hawkeye for Lucendi gets a quadra kill on Tristana, where it's like a champ that kind of earlier on maybe isn't that great, and you want to wait for him to get started, but then like you basically give him 4 kills. And it's like, well, what do we do from here? Like, what was it?
You talk about scrims, yeah. If that happens, you're like, all right, okay,
if that happens, scrims, you FF,
Yeah.
you go to the next block, don't you? So, what was it like at that point? Like after that quadra kill, did you guys were you kind of galvanized, or were you like, okay, maybe this is not the split for us?
I really don't feel like that affected us as much as it would have in other games. I think the stakes of the game really had the adrenaline going in us, and nobody was like, oh god, he's got a quadra kill. This is unwinnable now. It happens. We take a deep breath, and we're thinking about what we do next. A few seconds after, which I think was really impressive from a team. The people I play with, I was really impressed by the mental fortitude of them to just not get disheartened by that.
Fair enough. Then, obviously, a little while later, you started getting your own kills, playing Viego in mid. And to be fair, basically ended up like not to like discredit the rest of your team that much, but you basically, from an outside perspective, looked like you basically solo carried it. You ended up with like 11 kills. And yeah, the team fights, it went from maybe Tristana being the powerful one to yourself. Just even there was a few team fights where it looked like really close, but somehow you were never the one that died on your team, and you were quite fed, so you could just clear it up. Was that even something yourself? You thought, oh, screw this, I'm just going to take it over, get me a few kills, and I'll sort it out.
Wasn't really my thought process. I was playing the game, clicking my buttons, and when you click your buttons as Viego, you tend to win. So yeah, that's kind of what was going on there.
I have this ongoing hatred for Viego, and I point to games like this. I'm like, this champion is it's not even like if he's buffed or nerfed. It's just my opinion. I just think the kit is just something else, and even though they've reworked it a little bit and stuff, I just think that you added to my list of what I'm going to send Riot at the end of the season. Of here is everything wrong with Viego.
It's funny, I don't think. Oh, so go ahead.
I don't think it's the greatest creation at all.
How does it work? Like, this is maybe just like my own ignorance, but like when you pick someone up, do you get like their stats, or is it based on your own stuff? Because I noticed there's a couple of times where like you would pick up the Tristana, and they're like, and then Lucendi were like, "No, we're not having none of this." Like, just running away.
Sure. You pick up their stats and items, but the difference is you also keep your vehicle passive. So your autos are doing more damage, which is why possessing someone is even stronger than just having them.
Yeah, and I suppose that was the problem. Like Tristana seemed to like once it got into proper team fights, Tristana was like dying pretty quick after that first one when they got all the kills. And it literally looked like you were just like, okay, let me get Tristana, and then they just they just don't want none of it, and they literally just like run away, and just do your best to clear it up. But having a game like that just before playoffs, so even just personally, does that give yourself like a fair bit of confidence moving on, or do you think maybe that Viego is not likely to get through in the draft next time?
Surprised if we get Viego, or he is getting nerfed pretty hard solo lane next patch. But yeah, it gave me the. It felt like that's how I should have been performing full split, and maybe not 10-1. That's maybe a bit exaggerated, but yeah, I feel like I found my rhythm more than I had at the start of the split. We found our play style as a team. You know, I think if we reach certain conditions as a team and we get a draft that we like, then we're a really solid team. We have a really good chance of playoffs. So having a game like that to give us, hope and show that we can perform on stage the way we would like to is really helpful for us.
And I think that's kind of the nail on the head. I think with a lot of kind of UKEL teams is that a lot of it, while obviously there is like a skill barrier and skills between everybody involved, but I think that a lot of it is kind of how does this team synergize, and can this team synergize under what is quite short training regimes after that, and then a lot of that is bonding through then the games themselves, and I think that's why, because and I think it's with every kind of league, whether it's like the LEC to the UKEL, like regular season does matter, but it matters like in an objective. Okay, these are the strongest sides, and then it's playoffs to say, okay, well, which one of these is the strongest side out of all of them? And I think that's why it actually works. But I think especially in the UKEL, when there isn't that, like you said, time to fully commit to training 24/7 with these people, get kind of like a plan. I can imagine a lot of organizations are like, right, well, we're going to bring these players together. We have an idea of where this is going to go. And then if this playstyle doesn't work, it must take then so long to kind of implement a new playstyle when you don't have the resources to kind of suddenly change it. You can only do it through like conversations and not through practice. So I'm really interested. And I also think, though, you get some very interesting and entertaining games, and that's why it's always so close, I feel like, as well.
Just talking on on the topic of kind of the team dynamics and stuff. Now, some of your teammates, for example, like Goose, Kevin Mann, Longstaff, not really players I'd known too much about before. But Jojo was someone that at least had been like quite active, I think, on socials and things even before. I think he was like a sub on Barrage for a while. And it seems like a fairly lively character. Was that someone that was like good even just to have in the team, like personally, when things were maybe like a bit of a struggle? Was he like a nice pick me up?
Yeah, Jojo's really great to have around. He's a lot of fun. He's got a really calm attitude. He played 14 games of weak sides, never complained once. So yeah, just a really great guy to have around. He knows everyone. He's friends with everyone. So yeah.
Very nice.
Being a former top laner, did you put your thumbs up of appreciation of like, I know what you've been through. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, I've definitely lived through his pain. I see a lot of my own first split in him.
Yeah. You could have said, when I was playing against Shikari actually, he used to really like playing Ornn. So maybe you don't know, you'll end up liking it. Trust me. But yeah, were you able to even actually like on the riff things? Were you able to give him like some tips and give him some hints and things?
Yeah, I think sometimes I've shared, some advice with him on how to play certain situations. But I think as a whole, we tend to look at team macro more than individual macro. So like individual play. So mostly left it out to him. And he's doing a great job with it so far.
Fair enough. And yeah, kind of going on to playoffs themselves then. Like I said earlier, we still got I think, a tiebreaker to like work out exactly who you guys would be against. I'm fairly certain it'd be either Demise or X7, so I think there's like a tiebreak between them, and the loser will be against yourselves in the lower bracket. What are your thoughts against either of those? Obviously, X7 you literally played against this week. Unfortunately, lost to in that occasion. Would you fancy yourselves to beat them in a best of?
Uh, I think X7 is probably the harder team for us to beat. I kind of view them as sort of a nemesis team because we played against them in qualifiers, played against them a lot in the split. So yeah, I think I had a lot of time to gauge them as a team, and I think this might be a controversial opinion, but I think the current iteration of the roster is actually stronger. I think Anonymous is a really good support, and I think the new top lane is also extremely solid, and has a slightly easier champ pool to work around. So I think the current version of X7 is really strong. Yeah, I fancy our chances a little more against Demise, although I have to say I think Vossen is one of the players that's impressed me the most this split.
Was there anyone else like in the mid lane that you played against that you'd maybe seen in solo queue you didn't think would be that great, and then you played against them in the UKEL and like actually, in this environment, actually pretty decent?
I haven't seen many of. I've seen composites a bit of solo queue. The other ones, I don't think I've seen them very much, but I think composites. He definitely seems like a bit of a solo queue player to me, in the sense that he plays really weird champions. He on OP.GG has must played his Yon and then Churiath or something. And I'm assuming he's a rookie. I don't know for sure, but the way he played with Lucendi since he came on has really impressed me as well. And yeah, I think he's done really well.
Yeah. Kind of on that topic of like being like a solo queue player and things, is there any thought like when you said like when you started playing solo queue as a mid laner, you first picked up Zed, then you went to Silas. Is there much thought of like when you're in the UKEL, like you said, there's not much scrim time. Is there thought of maybe just even play these champs, even if they're not that great usually in competitive? Maybe I'd be better off just playing them, at this level. It's kind of like the equivalent of what like Leader was doing at Mouse, in like the Prime League, where he would say, like, yeah, I can play Oriana, which everyone says I can't play, but at this level, I'm better off just playing my assassins that I can do better anyway. So is there ever like a thought at that point as well? You think, well, competitively, if I was in the LEC, maybe these wouldn't be the best champ, but at this level, I could maybe just show up a bit more.
I don't think I've ever ruled a champion sort of off, but a lot of these champions rely on counter pick or a good situation for them. And a champion like Zed, if you mess up one play or you die once, your power as a champion really goes out the window, and you're kind of just a liability for the team. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't pick Zed, but they would definitely need a really good situation for it. I think it is actually quite a strong champion against champ pools of the mid laners. There's quite a few Yon players, and Zed does really well into Yon. So it's like not completely off the cards.
Very interesting. To be fair, at this point, we're going to go like almost now. I'm pretty much mostly out of my topics. To be fair, is there anything either yourselves or Tom you wanted to chat about today?
I just want to let's discuss the logistics of. You said anything is out of the table. So how would you play Yuumi mid lane then? What would you do? Like, just don't.
With a lot of difficulty.
That would be like if it was back. Imagine if Yuumi existed when it was like the funnel meta, where you the mid laner plays. Where you got like Faker playing Taric for SKT. That's where Uni mid might have happened, and just sit on Master Yi. I suppose thankfully that's not a thing. Is there anything like maybe not to that extent, but is there anything Munster maybe got up their sleeves that we could be surprised? You don't have to say exactly what it might be, but if there's any like odd strats or anything you maybe got in the pipeline.
Definitely got a few picks. If you go really deep in my solo queue profiles, you might see them. Pretty spicy, but only if the opportunity arrives. So keep your eyes peeled on our games. You might see something really wild.
Very nice. Well, like we say, you've basically got like two pools of champs. Then it could even be like some weird like top lane pick that no one's expecting. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, like I say, I'm pretty much out of my topics for today. Is there any last things anyone wants to chat about? I think we can maybe wrap it up.
I mean, if you want to mention NLC predictions, you can do, Lee. But we mentioned it off stream. So
I thought you'd want to stay away from that, Tom. Like I've said, you are no longer in the lead of our predictions. So for those that don't watch every week, sometimes depending on the guest, we don't always do predictions on the episode, but we always try and keep up on the NLC and basically tally our correct guesses. Tom was in the lead basically from week 1, and has now dropped it. He's just gone mental for last week and just predicts only upsets. And now our guests have overtaken, and me and Tom, we're now level. So I don't know. Do you watch much of the NLC, Beartree?
Very little. I don't know what's going on there. I'll be honest.
I mean, to be fair, half the NLC teams don't know what's going on there with some of these results.
Yeah.
I'll happily make predictions, but they won't have any research behind them.
To be fair, I'm not sure actually that because it's obviously heading to playoffs now. I don't think the playoffs are quite announced, or maybe I'm.
Well, so there's one more week left of play.
Yeah,
and I think if Beartree has not done any research on the NLC and the guests are currently beating me, I'm not saying I'm all for it. Like don't you dare put Megalodontis on this.
Yeah, he's an animal. So when obviously it depends on the guest we have. If you have someone that's not involved with the NLC, Megalodontis usually helps out with our NLC predictions. And he's obviously overtaken you now, Tom, with the help of Ferndog last week. But screw it then. Beartree, you can even pick some random teams just to help Tom out, so he can get back on top. I know his ego's like a bit funny with that. So let's just go through some of them. Starting with then Singularity against Resolve. I don't know if you might have played against some of the Resolve guys. Well, I suppose even some of the Singularity guys. You definitely played against Dragdar back in the UKLC. Any inkling as to what side that could go?
I'm gonna have to represent my boy Dragdar.
Just give him like a brief description of how each team is doing, like. Because I know if I say it, we'll be for about 10 minutes. So.
True. Well, Singularity were just before the last week. Basically, were top of Group A, ahead of XL, which was like a bit of an upset. They lost, I think, in a match to Tricked, didn't they, in a head-to-head, which has ended up with Tricked overtaking them. But Singularity still second place in Group A. Resolve have cleared relegations now, but we're looking a bit dicey, as Orcs I'm sure would say, through most of the split. So Singularity, like, well clear of Resolve, double the amount of wins, the clear favourites. Is there any chance of an upset? Do you reckon? I'm gonna screw it. I'm gonna help you out a bit, Tom. I'm gonna go Resolve because I think this might be actually my version of your Ents picks a few splits back. I'm pretty sure most weeks I always back Resolve, even when their form wasn't that great. I don't know. I just quite like Resolve, so I'll go for them again. Is there anyone?
Well, I'm going for the because Singularity is in the playoffs. They're the official British org in this group, I believe. So I'm gonna go with Team Singularity.
Understandable. What do you reckon then, Beartree?
Between Resolve and Singularity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's gonna have to be Resolve for me. There's a lot of my boys in that team. So.
Damn. Let's see then. After that, then we've got Granite against Dusty. This is again. There's no at this point actually. This is a bit weird because there's one. Obviously, we've still got technically a week left, but it's 1 day of games, and I think more or less every sport is well, not every sport, but all the final standings are kind of set in stone. So there's no teams that can get into playoffs. There's no teams that will go down to relegations. It's only really...
I think every spot basically is confirmed because I think the only one which I looked at was Galaxy Racer and Nordvim, but I think Galaxy Racer are 0-2 against Nordvim.
Yeah, so even then, like the head-to-heads are fine. It's the only implications there are is playoff placings. So for example, Granite against Dusty. Dusty are already going to relegations. Granite aren't going to playoffs. So there's no implications to this. There's no pressure on either team. Does that mean Dusty are going to turn it around now? There's no pressure on them anymore. They're playing free until relegations. You don't reckon, Tom?
It's Granite. No, it's Granite. It's Granite.
I might go Granite actually as well. I don't want to do all risky picks now that we're level points.
No.
What do you reckon, Beartree? Are you going to flip a coin or know anyone from either team?
I'll go with Granite. I don't want to let Tom get ahead for free.
Exactly. Good choice. Third game then. This could actually be quite a good one, and this is one that does have, I think, it depending on the head-to-head maybe, might have some implications. So, Tricked are top of Group A, and they're against BTXL. Actually, tell a lie. XL can't overtake Tricked, but XL could, I think, level with Singularity if they win. So again, it could be still like what point of the playoffs they enter in.
I think so. So right. So I'm looking at the beautiful table on Liquipedia, and I believe Singularity and XL are 1-1. So I think if Singularity lose, BTXL win, I believe that there'll then be a tiebreaker to see who gets second.
And then Tricked are also 1-1 with Singularity. So this is also Tricked wanting to, if they win this, they're guaranteed first place. So it has some implications for both teams. I'm gonna go for Tricked, to be fair. You know, that might seem easy being that they're like ahead. Obviously, the fact that XL is an academy usually would give them the advantage, but they haven't looked amazing since the swap. We spoke about it quite a lot last week. Where obviously, Dan and Denick have come in, replacing Markun and Advien. They've just swapped around for the LEC team. And yeah, XL haven't looked. To be fair, they haven't looked much worse because they also weren't playing amazingly well before. They were like having a bit of a weird split. They could argue that it was maybe like limit testing and things for playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. I'd fancy Tricked ahead of them, especially seeing as Tricked are a couple of wins ahead.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. BTXL are going to win though, so there you go.
If you say so, we'll see. What do you reckon, Beartree?
I can beat the XL.
Right, Beartree's answering first next because I'm seeing how this is going.
Go on then. This one then, Galaxy Racer against Godsent. So 2 teams that both can't get in relegation. So this is really just for, I suppose, bragging rights and reputation at this point. Galaxy Racer actually, even though they're 1 place ahead of Godsent, they're 4 wins ahead, which is quite substantial. So for the regular season so far, they've been clearly ahead of Godsent. But like I say, now there's no pressure on either teams. There's nothing but showing, you know, we were actually the better team or not. So go on then, Beartree, you take the lead on this one.
Seen Godson have uses, so I fully believe in the British.
Good choice. And actually, to be fair, I think that might be another team. Godsent and Resolve that I've predicted for, like maybe way too much that I should have done.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna. Once all the predictions are in, I'm definitely gonna do. This is what our predictions
what the table look like.
Because like so Beartree last season, I did. I think Ents was top of my table if I went off just the predictions of how they won, because Ents were always the team where I was like, I think they could upset this team, and they never.
And they literally finished 5th out of 6 teams, I think, in their group. But to be fair, Godsent is another one, and one of the reasons why is actually to kind of from when we had User on like a little while ago, and it was at the point where Godsent was still on. They still hadn't had a win. They went like 0-7 their first games. But the reason that I keep voting for Godsent is like User's positivity on that episode was like, I was thinking like these guys, there's like no mental break here. Like User was so positive that they were going to turn it around. I thought, you know what, I got to keep backing them up. And to be fair, they went from 0-7 to now 4-11. So they've got like basically the second half, they've more or less won as much as they lost, which is a big turnaround considering how they started. So I don't mind going for Godsent either, to be fair. I think I'll back you up there, Beartree. I think I'm going to go for them as well.
I'm going to go.
That gives you an easy one, Tom.
Yeah, I'm going the smart option.
Yeah, not surprised.
But you are right. Like, if I do have to, because I don't know how much we're going to actually talk about like the NOC later on anyway. Well, listen, like in later episodes and stuff, because we'll probably just focus on playoffs. So I do want to shout out Godsent, and I do actually want to say, yet again, another team, a bit like Granite. I always go into this and I'd be like, oh, I don't know where this team's kind of going to place. We always kind of rank them really low, and every time they prove me wrong, and I'm really glad about that. I've never been one of those people where I'm like, oh, I wish that I wish that I was right. I actually want these teams to prove me wrong, and Granite and Godsent have done that definitely. So
for sure. And they just seem to just do it consistently as well. I think next bit we've got to sort out maybe some tier lists to actually think about that. No matter what their roster looks like, we've got to think they've just got that buff of being those couple of teams. Anyway, next one then we've got is Nordavind against Fnatic Rising. Now, Nordavind can't move in the table. I think Fnatic, I'm just checking their head-to-head. So Fnatic, if they win this, they guarantee themselves first place. Although you know,
tiebreaker. If not,
yeah, so they could go to a tiebreaker still. I think didn't they play one game with the new player, Dajor mid?
yeah. So I think it was the last game that they played with their new mid laner because
Yeah.
Feb of them retired. I
Yeah,
mean, we
obviously,
didn't
literally,
know
I
that,
think
but
yesterday was officially announced.
yeah,
LEC
yeah.
Wooloo had maybe given some hints to it. But yeah, now with Featherfin officially gone, you've got Fnatic against Northern, two playoff teams. I don't know, Beartree, is Dajor someone you've maybe seen in solo queue, or is that a pretty much unknown name even to you?
I've seen him in solo queue for sure. I don't know too much about him, but pretty confident Fnatic for this one.
Oh, I'm gonna go. I am gonna go Nordvin on this one. Yeah. Everything is saying to me Fnatic. Yeah, they are. It is. But I'm believing in Kerberos. Come on, Kerberos, you can do this for me. That's it. That's all I need.
Seeing as you spent basically all of the split as the first place predictor when you were using your head, then if that's what your head's saying, Tom, I think I'll just copy that. So I'm going to go Fnatic. I'll let you give me a point there. And then the last one is...
Oh, I have to say though, we're not the only one. When we're saying like, oh, we don't know who this mid laner is. All I've heard about this mid laner is he's really good in challenger mode, but I've heard like nothing else about him.
Well, I think
it's like
even in
really
like that
good.
LEC Wooloo tweet, it said that he spent like most of the season like 1k plus LP, which is not bad at all. So it seems like maybe even one of those that, regardless of Forbidden retiring or whatever, it's basically was waiting to happen for him to eventually join a team and make an effort anyway. Obviously, just happened to be Fnatic that he gets that early chance straight in an academy, which is, I suppose, quite lucky. I think this last one is a fairly easy one then. The last match, Riddle against Kova. Riddle need to win to put a tiebreaker potentially against Fnatic. Kova are already in relegations. I suppose the one like caveat we could give is like Kova maybe they want to start turning things around before relegations. This is one last match they've got. No, Tom, you're shaking your head. You don't think that's going to happen?
Not a chance. No.
Yeah.
This is a riddle. This riddle is on the biggest win streak of the entirety of the NLC. 7 wins in a row. And I as much as I love to be proven wrong with Godsent and Granite, I'm gonna clip what I said in the tier list, and then what you and Frumi said, former Barrage Frumi. Oh, I don't know about this riddle roster. I'm like, nice, good roster this, and no, nobody believed me until this has happened, and now 7 wins in a row. And they're gonna top it because then they're gonna beat Fnatic in a tiebreaker.
Wow.
Probably not going to do that, but it'd be cool.
I don't know. Well, like you say, given the form and Fnatic swapping things up, it wouldn't be. I'd say if they head into tiebreaker and they finish joint first, I would imagine Riddle should be the favourites really for it, like given the form and everything as well. I'm going to go Riddle for that one as well. I'm not going to chance it and go against you this time, Tom. Yeah, that's a bit of a push too far. What do you reckon, Beartree? Is there anyone that you know on either side, or?
I played against slow queue and solo queue. That guy is really cracked, so I'm pretty confident on Riddle as well.
Fair enough. I don't blame you.
So did you said Kova, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've already written that as well, so we can't change it as well, by the way. We'll see what happens then. This is like getting into the crunch time of our prediction ladder then. And yeah, there's only a couple of points in it, so we'll see. I think that's pretty much a good point to maybe wrap the episode up then. Thanks for joining us, Beartree. Obviously, good luck in playoffs. One last thing I wanted to ask you as well, actually, it just reminded me. You said about once the next season starts, you see what kind of tryouts and things you get. Is there a decision on what role you do tryouts as well? Is there even a chance that you'd take a spot as a top laner back again?
Not a chance. Mid lane is definitely my home now.
Damn. Well,
enough orange duty for me.
Fair enough. That answers that then. So yeah, that pretty much do it for today. We can have a little look at, and we haven't got quite as tidy a graphic as usual about the exact matches that are going on, because like I said, there is some tiebreaker implications, but we can see at least on the screen now when the playoffs kick off on the 24th of July. I believe that's next Saturday, so that's when the playoffs start. And that will obviously start with the lower bracket. So Beartree, you'll I'm sure be ready for that next week. And then ends on the 1st of August when we'll have the playoff final. So do of course tune into those here on the UKEL channel. You can of course follow for the podcast too. So we're here live usually every Sunday, usually around this time, about 4 o'clock as well when we start. Otherwise, if you're watching later on either YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any platform, you can of course follow those directly. And all of our Twitters personally on the screen as well. So of course you can follow us directly there. And yeah, that'll pretty much do it for today. Thanks for joining. And yeah, thanks for listening.